I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 1st City Council meeting. Today is the first, it's like a happy new year because it's the first day of our new fiscal year. So happy new year to everyone. And I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have consideration of the minutes from the June 3rd and June 12th work session. Just so you know, the public input that was received from Mrs. Seeger has been already updated. And so are there any other revisions?
I have one. It says here, Kurt called the public, very beginning, June 3rd. Kurt called for public comment. I didn't say that how you said it. Okay. And I also didn't say to keep it on the 2 minutes. Just what happened.
She broke my heart. Any other revisions?
Yeah, on the resolution 2507,
Which June 3rd?
June, the 3rd, yes.
Okay.
Number 3, I had actually, before, the 5% conversation, I had asked for 3.5%. I had asked him if he could sharpen his pencil. And if we could do 3.5% instead of 5%, and that was to be in keeping with the cost of living increase. That is very effective for Social Security.
So where do you want that?
Before Gary and Tim Collier were talking.
Okay.
So in this. I should provide some reason. I just looked at the meeting, I didn't look here, so go ahead.
Yeah.
That was all. Okay. Anything else?
On June 12th, in council moving procedures updates, the bottom of that page, bottom of page 2 on June 4th. It says, Oscar Lake committee changes and suggested adding a city manager. I suggested removing the city manager. On that, that is correct, that paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
I'll move to approve the minutes of June 3rd and June 12th as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we have our public comment, and we'd like to keep the public comment under 3 minutes. And if you're speaking for a group, have a spokesperson for that group. And I also would like to remind everyone to be kind and respectful. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Everyone, okay, come on up in the back row.
Jocelyn, is this just your channel?
Yeah, this is general public comment.
Let's just go through this.
Do we have a spokesperson? Is this a group?
I can speak for myself.
Okay,
Okay,
so, and when you get up, you give your name and mailing address.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. My name is Dan Afterson. I live at 315 Elk Run Avenue. If anybody here remembers Ron and Suzanne Ronji, I bought their house. That was 8 years ago. Prior to that, I lived at 3615 South Pacific in a duplex purchased by my parents in 1952. It was called A flat, B flat, and middle C. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
Okay. In 1979, I had Bob and Gary Moon and Cannon Beach Volunteer Fire Department burned the house down. I constructed a brand new house. It took me 5 years to finish it, but I knew where my vacations and weekends were going to be spent. Anyway, as Cindy and I got closer to retirement, we decided we wanted to remodel our house. We spent $125,000 punching the front out, 14 feet, all was coated by Tim Lindsay. Everybody remembers Tim Lindsay. And we lived there until about 2012, and we were starting to be retired. But if any of you go back to the days when you had 92 dedicated rental houses, does anybody here remember that? You guys are all newbies. Anyway, there were 92 houses. And one house sold, and you go in, and I believe you put in $100 because you had the lottery, and you would be picked out of this lottery. Well, I was lucky enough to have a house that sleeps 11 people, 5 cars, and numerous dogs. And I lived there for 20 years with that house, less than 15 feet from my window. I could cite numerous times when we had problems. Quite frankly, I couldn't depend on the city to do anything. Anyway, we made a 5-year effort to decide whether we want to move. We went up to Haystack Heights and said, this is a community. This has got little kids, this has got retired people, police chiefs, fire chiefs, ex-mayors. It's a community, store owners, people that own the Screw and Brew, people that own Bill's Tavern. So I guess I'm painting a picture, you all know what it's gonna look like. Anyway, we moved up there, and I can honestly say in the last 20 years, it's been the best 8 years. So with that, I'm voting to not see any more long-term, for short-term rentals. I have one for sale across the street from me. I read the ad and it said, license goes with this house, short-term license. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. I talked to my neighbor, he said as many as 28 people are in there. So I don't keep that much score, but what I'm doing is I'm saying, I don't want short-term rentals. Now we have the one for sale for $1,085,000. Someone's gonna buy it, turn it into a rental, maybe, unless the council or someone in the city can say, no, it doesn't go back into the rental pool with the next person to purchase it. So anyway, I did talk to one counselor who will go unnamed about 25 years ago. And she knew me, she says, Dan, follow the money. So at the time, it was 70 cents out of every dollar came from short-term rentals or something like that. Is anybody on the council familiar with that number? The other thing I've noticed in the I've been a voter down here for 40 years, even when I worked in Portland. But the other thing I noticed is a lot of people on the council have a vested business interest out here. More turnover, more money, better business. I know I can run, but I'm too old. I don't want to. But short-term rentals are not being in favor of these guys.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yes.
I'm Jocelyn Smith, Field Officer 35. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our concerns tonight. I'm a mom, a wife, I have 2 small kids. We are raising our family up in Haystack Heights neighborhood. I'm speaking to you to ask, as well as many others, to consider the cap on allowing other short-term rentals, specifically east of 101. This has traditionally been a stronghold for local residents. We lived here for the past 5 years, and it's a community. It's where families live, kids ride their bikes, we know our neighbors. But more and more over, especially the last two years, maybe 3 years, it doesn't always feel that way, especially in the busy summer months. Cars regularly speeding down our streets, trash cans overflowing, raccoons making a mess, and it's all left for us to pick up. Like my husband recently raised the concern about trash to a local rental company, and they're like, well, nothing we can do about it. And we were, oh, okay. But there's just a constant turnover of faces. There's transient traffic, and it just slowly chips away at our sense of community and our sense of safety and stability, especially for me as I'm just raising my family. East of 101 does hold the last truly authentic residential neighborhoods in our town. Our neighborhood and then the one closer to Sunset over here by the RV park. It's where families build community, and all the members are supporting our schools, local businesses, and each other. Short-term rentals, also take away from long-term housing options. It makes it harder for working families, young people, and essential employees to find an affordable place to live in the community that they actually serve. East of 101 should remain a place where us year-round residents can actually afford to stay. We're not against visitors, we love sharing Cannon Beach, but there is a real difference between hosting tourists and transforming residential neighborhoods into a revolving door of rentals. Short-term rentals also undercut our hotels, hurt the restaurant industry, and which both depend on a steady flow of guests to make a living. Please give the next generation a chance to live here and protect our neighborhoods for the people who live here and truly make it a special place to live. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, guys. I am Kathleen Chadwell, PO Box 134. I live with all these guys, I'm in Haystack Heights, 3716 Oakland Place. My family came here in 1967, and we had a house next door to Surfsand. So my entire childhood was with tourists. And I loved being that close to the beach, but we had people in our front yard, we had people in our driveway. We couldn't get our cars out, we had to go someplace, there was always garbage everywhere that we cleaned up. I still to this day walk to the beach with a garbage bag, to pick up all the trash. And 21 years ago, I bought into Haystack Heights, which was the best thing I ever did at Cannon Beach, and I love it here. And Cannon Beach, it's just like Jocelyn was saying, we have kids up there, it's one way in, one way out. It's truly what's left of the original Cannon Beach, where you have a neighborhood that's workers. It's the owners of restaurants, owners of hotels, it's our police presence is up there. And we're all neighbors, we know each other, we know each other's kids. If they're down at my house, I know I can yell up the street and say, they're over here. And I think that's important. And locals, you still need us to be here. And I recognize what tourists do. I recognize they drive our economy, they hold us over the winter. And I don't have a problem with that. But the reason I left the presidentials, which was pretty damn cool down there, was because I wanted to be in a residential area. That's me.
Thank you. Thanks. Next.
Just have my neighbor place on Little Creek.
Very good.
I'm Ken Seagar, 3723 Cobalt Place. And I'd like to make this two things. It's like, I grew up where 2-3 steps this way, 2-3 steps that way, and had enough kids to play camping. So this is a nice neighborhood. I can get kids happy to play. The other thing, kind of tagging on what Kathleen said, it's like, we're here year round. So when times are down, there's not much business, we're supplying that business. We do that every day, year round. We're part of this economy. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. I just like to have that made for it. So appreciate your time.
Thank you. What else?
Margot Wallach, I live at 3679 East Chinook Box, 82. Yeah, I won't reiterate what's already been said. I've been coming to Cannon Beach since the Children's Center opened, so over 30 years ago. And I've lived in Cannon Beach 30 years, and Haystack Heights for 28 years. I raised both my children there. And it is truly a very special neighborhood. One thing that I would like to bring to your attention, why I think there needs to be a cap on vacation short-term rentals up there, is it's really a safety issue. And thank you so much in Public Works for putting a 15-mile-an-hour sign up, because people are paying attention to that. But just last week, there were 3 different situations in which I was outside working in the front of my garden beds, and cars were flying up the hill, kicking up dust. And I literally was standing up with like this with my arms, getting people to slow down. So it's truly a safety hazard as well. They're encouraged to get someplace, whether it's to leave the neighborhood or ride in the neighborhood or connect with people. And I go back and think about my older son Gabriel, who was blind and had many disabilities. And one of the beautiful things about that neighborhood was that he could get oriented there, the community knew him, and he actually had some independence in that neighborhood.
At this point in time, with the number of strangers we have taking holidays in various homes, it would be so unsafe for him. And I think about that for the children who can randomly play in our streets right now because somebody has an eye on them, but it's not safe on the roads, particularly East Shinnecock, it seems like. So thank you for taking all our testimonies.
Thank you. Yeah. Second, or
Margaret Duber, I live at 331 Deer Place in Haystack Heights. Pretty much all of what they've said is what's in my heart about this. I have mobility issues, I have balance issues, I have a little dog that I walk several times a day, and just today, as I was heading out, you can't hear the cars very well because of what are around. They kind of just overpower the cars that might be right here, one there, whoop, by me and my little dog, and it's looking like that, and anyway, it's a neighborhood, we want it to stay a neighborhood, that's why people buy there, I'm sure. Not, they have a short term, but they may not, like, they have a short term rental, but I hope you listen to all these comments, I'm not gonna repeat what they've said, but thank you very much.
thank you. Next.
I'm Marcia Seagar, and I live in 3723 Cobble Place. And first, I'd like to thank council and the mayor for adding short-term rental onto the agenda tonight. And as you can see from this wonderful showing of our neighborhood, that it's really important to us. And sitting here in this audience are so many amazing contributing members that help make Cannon Beach the place it is. And we are the heart and soul of Cannon Beach, and we've selectively chosen a neighborhood because it was residential. And as the city council and mayor definitely know, because short-term rentals require a business license, they collect money, they are a business enterprise. And I understand that how the city has chosen to regulate them, that you've been able to kind of bypass some of the land use by putting it in a different type of an administrative rule. Some of the concerns that we have, along with everything mentioned here, the city of Cannon Beach, by moving forward with short-term rentals in neighborhoods that are definitely designated as residential, not a mixed zone, have not been able to enforce or to provide 24/7 code enforcement that's local. So for those of us who live there, we do have an ability to write a concern. But in terms of having someone that can actually come and respond when we are having an issue, that is very hit and miss. And my biggest concern too is our neighborhood and our children. You know, those of us who live there, we know everybody, we know all our neighbors. We know the dogs, we know the kids, you know, if we have friends coming up, you know, we'll call and say, hey, make sure that, you know, drive very carefully because, you know, the kids are out riding their bikes or playing basketball, or somebody just had surgery and they're kind of walking a little slower in the neighborhood. People that come up into our neighborhood now with short-term rentals, they're on vacation, they don't know those components, and they honestly don't care. And it's very troubling to make the biggest home investment that you've ever made, thinking that residential means residential, and then without even receiving notification, find a short-term rental just pop up next door. So, um, I'm truly hopeful that the city council and the mayor will find this actually as an opportunity. I noticed that one of the things that's on the agenda tonight is lease to locals. And we would encourage you to make Haystack Heights your pilot program for restricting and actually creating a neighborhood where if a person decides to invest in the neighborhood, they can be assured that that is not a short-term vacation rental community, and that they may have opportunities to invest in a program such as lease to locals. And that we really can, as the city has suggested, that they're trying to preserve the character of neighborhoods. We'd really like you to do that, and we appreciate and would love to work with you. And we'd also love to work with you in order to support our local hotels, our inns, our businesses. They are established and know how to handle the tourism. It would help focus resources to a more restrained area because everybody is stretched thin. So I think that there's many, many advantages for trying this. And we really appreciate your sincere consideration.
Thank you. Oops, now, oh. Anybody else? You got it.
I almost feel like I don't have to, because there's so many other people here. Think about it, I'm so excited. Oops, sorry. I'm running behind what here today. Hi, Michelle, Barbara, PO Box 719. Okay. With a population close to 10 times larger than ours, Astoria has successfully put a cap on STRs. At 50, personally, I'd like to applaud them for prioritizing the housing stock to be used for long-term residences, which in turn limits the number of second homes that can offer to remain vacant. Here on the coast, our most valuable resource, we need to actively make steps forward. I suggested that in our housing workforce group that we cap the number at 100. I think everybody else is at 200. I think twice as much as Astoria. That's twice as much, and they're 10 times as large. Not taking away any current licenses, but eventually getting that number down. I'll say it again, even in the short 6 years I've lived here, I've had to move because I've lost my housing to STRs, and so have a lot of my friends. The seaside standards are based upon approved location, spatial distribution and density. They have both exclusion zones and density restrictions. You've had a chance, I think, all to look at Randy's report. On the density, some lots are inundated with this STRs. I encourage you to all really consider on putting a strong cap on this number and making exclusion zones, for example, everything east of 101. While I'm here talking about this, I'd like to point out that the penalties for violations are ridiculously limited. I feel like one warning and that's it, you lose your license. I went to a talk last week in Astoria about housing, and they passed out this chart. I think you guys seen this chart, yeah, this pie chart. So it's insane. So Astoria, it's a chart on vacant homes for seasonal use and short-term rentals. And Astoria is around 15%, and Seaside is at 32%, and Cannon Beach is at 68%. So, I mean, if there's a gasp in this meeting. So I really would think that it would be a good idea just to like figure out to really bring that number down, focus on community, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you guys want, I put it up, these to the, you guys can't see these all. Yeah, okay, that's
Can
it.
I just talk about that?
Yeah, and my picture was here, and you know,
You want me back now?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think it's out there, yeah,
Yeah.
we're supposed to put it out. Okay, that's it, I'm so glad everybody else is here, thanks, I don't live in Haystack Heights either.
Anybody else? On anything, no public, other comment, anybody on Zoom? if you'd raise your hand, if you'd like to speak. Okay, one more time. Anybody in the audience?
I know your name.
Oh. Oh, shit. Good evening, Sharon.
Good evening, Sharon Clyde, Post Office Box 973. I also live in Haystack Heights, and I would like to just second everything that has been said. This truly is a wonderful neighborhood, and it would, if there's any way that we can keep it as a neighborhood without the short-term rentals, that would be fabulous. Also, I think that it would be great for the city to cap the amount of the short-term rentals allowed in the city limits. It just seems to be more of a problem than not. And I guess just, again, I'd like to reiterate what the rest of the speakers said. I'm in total agreement. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more time. Anybody? Okay, thanks, everyone. So next we will go into our resolutions section, and we have a number of resolutions relating to food, beverage, and other city-related items. And Ashley was ready to add this.
All right. Good evening, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. So what we're talking about today is updating the city's policies regarding official compensation packages for food, beverage, and other city-related items for all types of public officials at the city. So the elected members of the city council, appointed city officials on your boards and commission, and also city employees. So I don't typically create a packet of more than 50 pages. So I appreciate the council's patience with all the materials that I put in. I'll walk through this rather slowly and then take some questions. So this spring, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, which you're going to hear me refer to as OGAC, issued an opinion letter that was relatively surprising to most in the local government community. What this opinion letter found was under ORS 244.040, which is use of office, a public body, which includes the city, may not provide food and beverages to its employees, elected officials, or appointed officials unless those items are expressly included as your part of your official compensation package. So this restriction applies to many routine practices that are common in local governments, including providing meals during governing body or staff meetings that are held over the lunch or dinner hour, volunteer appreciation events for appointed boards and commission members, team building activities where food and beverages are served, and holiday celebrations or retirements, events that include food, beverages, or small gifts. As discussion has progressed on this issue, because again, it was surprising to most in the local government community, this decision could impact things as small as bottled water offered during city council meetings, cups of coffee offered, to employees or elected officials during meetings. So it makes sense for the city to take some action here so the city can continue its longstanding practice of providing these incidental food and beverage items. So in this letter of opinion, OGAC clarified that a city government can create an exception for benefits that are expressly made part of a public official's compensation package as determined by the public body. In other words, a city may continue to offer food and beverages if such items are formally adopted as part of the quote unquote official compensation policy. So as I mentioned before, given the broad scope of this opinion, this interpretation may also apply to non-monetary items such as city logo pens, hats, or other tokens that are often distributed to public officials. As I just mentioned, it could even apply to bottled water or coffee that is in the city cafeteria. So as a result, it's our office's recommendation that the city council formalize these practices and adopt policies that are applicable to all the different types of public officials that work for the city. So I have in your packet 3 different types of policies. One policy that applies to city employees, which essentially makes these incidental items part of city employees' compensation packages. We have distributed this policy to both unions at the city, and not surprisingly, they did not have any concerns because, again, it doesn't increase compensation, it just formalizes the practice so it doesn't become an ethical violation for city employees for drinking a cup of coffee offered by the city. I also have a policy in front of you that's specific to appointed officials. That one's pretty straightforward as well. You would like to be able to offer, a board member, a commission member, a cup of coffee or attend some sort of appreciation event without that appointed official risking an ethical violation. And then the one that's a little bit more complicated that we're going to talk about next is the policy that applies to elected officials. And before I get to that, I want to stop here and ask if the city council has any questions about the need for a policy or why our office is recommending the city adopt policies for employees and other public officials.
Any questions?
I have one question on the policy exhibit A, item 4. Says compensation provided as part of an official compensation package may be subject to income tax per IRS rules on taxable benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Provided food and beverage are not intended to be taxable fringe benefits. I guess I'm a little unclear whether there's a danger there of them being taxable. Can you explain?
Yeah, so, there's a bunch of different laws that were implicated here, and one of them is the potential for tax. So we did some research on this issue, and it's our opinion that these types of food and beverages that are provided that are incidental are going to be so de minimis that they do not create any sort of taxable compensation for any city employees or appointed or elected public officials, but it is something to be aware of.
It may be subject to income tax, but it's not intended that they are.
Yeah, so they are these types of food and beverages meet the de minimis exception to the IRS standards. If they were more substantial, for instance, if we were giving away, sweatshirts or like lots of t-shirts, those sort of things could be taxable, but simply meals that are provided by the city at the city offices are not going to be taxable under the IRS's laws. But that is personal to the public official. So it's more providing notice that, these things could become taxable, but what the city is providing is intended not to be taxable. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. That's it for questions so far.
Okay, so then the next issue. So for employees and for appointed public officials, this process is really straightforward. We have a resolution that applies to both of those types of public officials. So our recommendation there is that all members of the city council can vote on formalizing the compensation package for public employees and appointed officials. However, there's a second ethical wrinkle here, and that is conflicts of interest law. Because we are talking about official compensation package, elected officials may not be able to participate in the decisions where they have an actual conflict of interest, meaning a financial interest for themselves, their relatives, or a member of their own households. So when voting on policies that constitute official compensation, we have to be pretty careful about how we manage these conflicts. Also, conflicts of interest under Oregon law are personal to each public official, and as such, the city attorney, which is me, is not permitted to provide individual legal advice to council members regarding their specific circumstances. However, I can provide general recommendations regarding a resolution voting structure that aligns with my interpretation of the guidance issued by OGEC. And I provided both the opinion that came out this spring that was surprising regarding the official compensation packages. I also provided a number of opinions from OGEC about these types of issues, a city council, increasing or amending compensation packages for itself. The voting structure below aligns with that advice from OGEC. However, I admonished here that individual council members that have questions about how the ethical laws apply to their personal circumstances are encouraged to consult directly with OGEC to obtain any guidance that you may need. So the voting structure that I'm recommending is takes into account that you guys are a 5-member body, and that if we are going to adopt a policy that applies to all 5 members, we actually have to do it through 3 separate resolutions. So the first resolution amends the official compensation package for the mayor. My recommendation is that all councilors except the mayor may vote on this. The mayor must declare an actual conflict of interest and then refrain from discussion or vote. Any councilor that may consider declaring a potential conflict of interest if they have any intention of running for mayor in the future. The second resolution I have for the official compensation packages for councilors seated in seats 1 and 2, who may vote on this. The mayor may vote, and then councilors seated in seats 3 and 4. And then the councilors seated in 1 and 2 must declare an actual conflict of interest and then refrain from voting. And then the third one is the compensation packages for councilors seated in seats 3 and 4. So who may vote? The mayor and councilors seated in 1 and 2. The councilors seated in 3 and 4 must declare an actual conflict of interest and refrain from voting. As I talked about, it's pretty straightforward for city employees and public officials. Luckily for you, Jen figured out who was in what seat. And so she has provided a sample motion for each one of these resolutions. So I'm going to stop there. And does any member of the council have any questions about the voting structure that I am proposing?
Is this a voting structure that the League of Oregon Cities has also put forward? Is there ideas regarding the OGEC opinion, or have they not weighed in on what their suggestions are for communities?
I am not aware of them weighing in.
It has been brought up in some of the legislative updates, but
they haven't.
yeah,
I mean, it seems relatively straightforward, albeit circuitous.
Yeah. Just to be clear, fire that they're just connected, yes.
Get this done?
Yeah, let's get it done.
So I'll move to approve resolution 2510 for the purpose of establishing an official compensation package for the mayor for food, beverages, and other city-related items.
Second.
Do you want the mayor to declare the conflict now, or?
She should declare the conflict during before being asked to vote on the item. So yes, I think that would be a good time.
I would like to declare a conflict of interest. An actual conflict of interest.
Ready for roll?
Yeah.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Councilor Ostrander,
Yes.
Councilor Ham,
Yes.
Councilor Hay.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. My process.
Oh, your cousin, you, the board company.
Okay. Next.
Will someone else do 4511?
I move to approve resolution 2511 for the purpose of establishing an official compensation package for council positions 1 and 2 for food, beverages, and other city-related items.
Second.
So I'll declare a conflict of interest and refrain from discussion or vote.
I'll declare a conflict of interest, refrain from discussion or vote.
Okay, we're ready for the roll call?
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Congratulations. Okay, that's
I'll move to approve resolution 2512 for the purpose of establishing an official compensation package for council positions 3 and 4 for food, beverages, and other city-related items.
The second,
I'll declare an actual conflict of interest and refrain from discussion or vote on the same.
And I will, declare an actual conflict of interest and refrain from discussion or vote.
ready for roll call?
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. And congratulations.
Jen,
Okay, so that-
Before we move on, for the actual resolutions, for the actual resolutions for the counselor positions, in the whereas clauses, we have counselor who holds position 3 and counselor who holds position 4. When we go to sign those, could we actually insert the counselors' names of the counselors that are currently in those positions?
Yes, I will get that corrected.
And before we move on to the city employees and appointed officials, Gary, I want to answer your question a little bit better. I pulled up the guidance on when something becomes a taxable fringe benefit under federal tax law. So the value of a de minimis benefit is excluded from your tax deductions. So a de minimis benefit is property or services provided that has little or no value, taking into account how frequently you're provided similar benefits. So the accounting for it would be basically the issue here is whether taking into account every time you get a cup of coffee from the cafeteria is unreasonable or administratively impractical. So when it is so little that tracking that is unreasonable or administratively impractical, that becomes a de minimis benefit. The examples of things that are de minimis, therefore not taxable, is personal use of a provided cell phone, occasional use of a company copying machine, holiday or birthday gifts that have a low fair market value, many meals that are provided by your employer, or in this case, the city, occasional parties or picnics for employees and their guests, occasional tickets for theater or other sporting events. Types of food that is always de minimis and therefore always excluded from your taxes are like coffee, donuts, and other soft drinks, occasional parties or picnics for employees or volunteers, or meals that are provided on your business premises, or meals that are provided at the city's premises for this one, and then that are furnished for your convenience. So again, I'm not providing tax advice, but the idea here is that the food and beverages provided by the city are intended not to go over that de minimis threshold and not create any taxable liability for any of the public officials. Does that answer your question a little bit better?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. I still think we still need to do the resolutions for the employees and the appointed officials, I believe.
So I move to approve resolution 2513 for the purpose of establishing an official compensation package for City of Cannon Beach employees for food, beverages, and other city-related items.
Second. Ready for roll call?
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Congratulations to the city employee.
Anything else to know?
No, you got it.
I move to approve resolution 2514 for the purpose of establishing an official compensation package for public officials for food, beverage, and other city-related items.
Second. Ready for roll call? Please.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
So now there's nothing that prevents Deanna from bringing cookies to a meeting.
Well, Deanna's not your public employer. There's nothing preventing Bruce and the city from bringing cookies to the meeting now.
Okay, you're lucky.
I heard you like the player.
Okay, I'd like to thank Ashley and Jen, because that's all of this took quite a bit of work. Kind of unfortunate that we have to spend city time and meeting time for it, but we have to react when we get those kind of rulings, so. Our levity is, we do realize it took a lot of work for them to do that, so thank you very much. So next we'll go to resolution 2515, for the lease for locals program. Steve?
Evening. So what we're taking a look at tonight is the Lease to Local program that we've been talking about with our joint work sessions. Many of you attend the joint housing task force meetings with Clatsop County, Gerhart, Seaside, our other community partners, all looking at a regional way of trying to address some of the shortages in terms of long-term housing available for workforce in our area. And so the Lease to Locals has been talked about during these sessions with Marcy from Burbsworth, Alyssa Gertler from Clatsop County, and Kay Frolic from PlaceMate, who was the owner of the company that provided a presentation at the joint work session. There's an ability for the county to apply for a grant from Columbia Pacific Coordinated Care Organization. And it's a grant secured funds for 2 years, a 2-year period to see if such a Lease to Locals pilot program might be successful countywide. Based on city discussion and interest in the Lease to Local program, it appears that such a countywide program is worth exploring to see if any local property owners might take advantage of the program. So there are basically no costs to the city to participate in the program. Yeah, other than a voice of support and a resolution of support with the grant application. And basically what the resolution is just identifying is that there's a shortage of workforce housing. That long-term rental housing for local workers has significantly declined due to the conversion of county units to short-term for increasing costs and limited new construction. The Lease to Locals program is initiated by Clatsop County and offers financial incentives to property owners to convert short-term or vacant homes into long-term housing. Clatsop County will serve as the lead agency in contracting with PlaceMate. And Cannon Beach would just affirm its intent to collaborate with Clatsop County. So we're basically showing support of the program, partnering with the county and our other communities, and committing to collaboratively working together to try to see if we can try to convert some homes out there to help with some of the housing shortages. So I think from our perspective, I think it's something we talked about a lot. Doesn't cost us anything, and there's an ability to provide support, and I think it's a worthwhile program, and that I would recommend the council strongly consider approving the resolution.
Yeah, I was in favor of this when it came and presented, even if we were paying for it, so if we can not have to dip into the affordable housing fund to get this started to see if it works. I'm very moving forward and partnering with this.
So this is an intent to collaborate with the other communities, and then all the other communities will approach the Columbia Pacific Coordinated Care Organization to secure funds.
No, Clatsop County will. They will be the head agency administering the program. And the county, and it's a countywide program that each of the individual communities can choose to participate in. So our whole effort in this is supporting the resolution and hoping that individuals who have housing in our community take advantage of the program.
So I'm just curious, there will be a grant request, but it's gonna come from the county.
Right.
So you clarified that. In an effort to secure funds for a 2-year period, to see if such a lease to locals pilot program might be successful countywide. So are those funds the actual dollar incentives that are offered to
That's correct. We haven't completely finished the guidelines. There is a draft and a lot of us will be working in terms of what those specific incentives are. There was PlaceMate providing some examples. They are very well, this is their business, so they know how to go about figuring out some of those incentive rates and things like that. So they've made some suggestions that myself, Alyssa Gertler, other members of the task force are taking a look at to try to craft our guidelines for our program. But the idea is to do it countywide, and then if there's success there and people are taking advantage of it, then the individual communities down the line may have to determine whether or not they want to set aside funds after the initial pilot program. Maybe there might be an opportunity to apply again, but I think the idea was to at least try the program and then for the individual communities to maybe, if they want, choose to do this on their own. And that would take dedicated funds from the communities who choose to do that, right?
Well, I think the fact that it's a regional approach, because that's the only way we're gonna solve, our housing issues, is to work together. And, I mean, I just think it's a great resolution to be at.
I agree. I do have, will you need city staff time to help with this program, or will it all be done?
It'll all be through the county, but obviously we'll work a little bit, like I said, I have no problem working with Alyssa from the county housing department to in an effort to craft the guidelines that eventually we're going to choose to move forward with. So there might be some collaboration from that perspective, but in the end, it's gonna be PlaceMate who is actually kind of the consultant, operating this on our behalf. But everything is gonna be run through Clatsop County.
So PlaceMate will do the legwork.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a resolution. Okay, for the purpose of Cannon Beach, Oregon, affirming the city's intent to partner with Clatsop County and regional stakeholders in implementation of a 2-year pilot program known as Lease to Locals, which aims to address critical workforce housing needs through voluntary property owner incentives and regional collaboration.
second?
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Yes.
Councilor Henderson.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Council President Kerr.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we're in our proclamation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors. Staff reports consideration of proclamation 25-10 declaring August 5th, 2025 as National Night Out Day. Background: National Night Out enhances the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement while bringing back a true sense of community. Furthermore, it provides a great opportunity to bring police and neighbors together under positive circumstances. Millions of neighbors take part in National Night Out across thousands of communities from all 50 states, U.S. territories, and military bases worldwide on the first Tuesday of August. Neighborhoods host block parties, festivals, parades, cookouts, and various other community events with safety demonstrations, seminars, youth events, visit from emergency personnel, exhibits, and much, much more. This year, we're proud to say that we're hosting and organizing our 10th annual National Night Out.
Anybody have any questions?
No, sounds like fun.
We purposely not scheduled a city council meeting tonight, so we can partake, and now we can
We'll have some good food.
have a beverage here.
Yeah.
Well, I move to adopt proclamation 2510 declaring August 5th, 2025 as National Night Out Day in Cambridge.
Second. Roll call please.
Councilor Hammond.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor O'Brien,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but this says 2510. Oh, is that different? It's different than the resolution.
Yes.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
the proclamation.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, we're all okay? Great,
Thank you very much.
see you there.
Yes.
Got confused.
Okay, so next we have an action item, consideration of Parks and Community Services Community Grant Award recommendations for 2025-26. We have Leslie Claire, the chair of the
Yes.
Parks and Community Services Committee, here to answer questions if there are any.
I would like to just start off by saying thank you again to the mayor, the council, the members of the budget committee for giving us the ability to support 20 really good-looking local nonprofits this year. We're very pleased that we're able to do that. Thank you. Have any questions that I can answer with regard to our award? Sure.
And so I'm noticing when I look down the list of the amount requested and the amount, recommended by the committee for almost everything, you pretty much came pretty fairly close.
As far as like a proportion,
Yeah,
yeah, I think so.
except for classic community action, I'm just wondering why that's.
Let me look at them real quick. The way this process goes is there are 5 of us currently serving on the committee. And we all read the packets, we all participate in the face-to-face interviews, ask our questions. But at the end of the day, then we all separate and each of us is able to allocate our budget amount as we think is best. And there isn't any hard and fast rules, what should and shouldn't be done. So some of us felt strongly that certain types of programs were more meaningful to them personally. I cannot give you a specific answer on classic community action. I simply can't speculate beyond that. It's simply a fact that some members were more ecologically oriented and some of us were more human needs.
And there are about 3 of them on here that have that kind of wide discrepancy between the requested and.
Yeah,
and what-
sometimes it's the nature of the ask.
Recreation.
All of them were, we felt like they were all qualified to receive benefits through the program. They met all of our criteria. Sometimes an ask is a little harder to understand and sometimes that plays into it. My personal opinion is things that are very discreet, we want to use money to do a particular project that we understand, it's easier to feel good about. Those things all kind of play into it.
Right, that makes sense, thank you.
Well, and with the budget of 175 and an ask of 220, that's obviously have to remain something, at some point in the decision-making process.
Yeah, and it's always that way. We always have more asks than what we're able to give. I just again appreciate the fact that, we actually went into the budget cycle with less than 175, and it was through the dialogue between the budget committee and the council that we were able to bump it up to 175. Otherwise, the numbers would look obviously lower and not nearly so pleasing.
Any other questions? Okay, someone like to make the motion?
I move to adopt the fiscal year 25-26 grant awards as presented.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call please.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. So I would like to say thank you to the committee because I'm very well aware of how long it takes and
Yes, you are.
did it for several years, but thank you and we look forward to the announcement of them in the concert in the park.
I was gonna close with that, though, we're planning to have a public announcement, basically describing the community grant process for this year at one of our concerts that is part of the funding that we provide, actually. There'll also be something in the city's letter as well as, I hope something in the Gazette. That'll kind of detail what the city's been able to do. Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good work out.
Okay, next we start our discussion items, and the first one is shoreline stabilization.
Would you like me to come up?
Yes.
I've got short-term revenue.
I-
The other way around.
Yeah, but I thought short term first.
Oh, okay.
If
Right,
I-
it's just- in the packet, it's-
Okay, follow me, Bridget. Yeah, so we should have multi-shore runs, because I looked and I thought. So, Council Kerr requested this item to be put on the agenda for discussion, and, you wanna-
Yeah, I believe, I think that there was, I'm not sure, is Diana on?
Yes.
She wanted to, address the council, I think she thought she was supposed to wait till the item came, she was gonna ask you, I don't know if you asked her or not. But she wanted to speak before this particular item,
Okay,
so. I would like to represent her,
She's got time on the 15th.
well, the 15th is the presentations on, from the range of experts.
So she should have spoken during public comment.
Yeah, but I think we're, if
I would just-
it's okay with the council, as long as we can.
I think time limits.
Are we okay with you?
Yeah, as long as there's a limited amount of time.
3 minutes, kind of respectful.
They are.
Okay, go ahead and unmute her. Good evening, Diana.
Hi, guys. Thank you. Ooh, I gotta move over, I guess. Thank you for letting me talk tonight. I'm speaking, let's see, Diana Turner, PO Box 211. I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Dunes at Cannon Beach. I want to thank you all. As you'll remember, in this last year, we've had 2 riprap applications, both of which were appealed to you and denied. During the application process, you and the Planning Commission expressed great frustration at trying to wrestle with such an unclear, outdated code and current scientific engineering and land use knowledge. During your deliberation of the Siegel application, there was unanimous agreement among you that our shoreline codes are in desperate need of a revision, and to quote Councillor Hayes, sooner rather than later. You'll also remember that the Siegel's attorney said that he would quickly bring back their application. And of course, other applications are always in process. So I wanted to update you tonight on the revision work that has been done. The former development director, Jeff Adams, encouraged me to provide recommendations to clarify and add to our existing codes in order to improve both governance with clear and objective language and in concert with the state's codes, and coastal resilience to meet the challenges of sea level rise and climate change. I was joined by some of Oregon's top shoreline policy experts, Meg Reed of DCLD, Rhiannon Bazor of DCLD, Carl Hendricks, a NOAA Sea Grant Fellow, Cameron LaFollette of Orca, Charlie Plybon of Surfrider, Surfrider National Policy Manager, Stephanie Sechik Quinn, Denise Loffman of Crest, And at the city's direction, Garrett Phillips, who was brought in, he works with Crest as a planner to write code language, as Robert and Jeff did not have the capacity to take on this additional work. We met several times and accomplished some solid work. Now that you guys have finished with your wetlands revisions, and I want to congratulate you on that, I know it's hard work, and the tree code is in process, we're thankful that you agree it's time to give the shoreline, the ordinances, the proper attention they need. Because of the time required to accomplish a thoughtful, comprehensive revision, we are supporting a moratorium on shoreline hard armoring only. This would save city staff, applicants, community members, the planning commission, and you time, effort, and frustration as you wrestle with our outdated and inexact code. As an example, remember the lengthy discussion and lack of consensus of what constitutes demand. While the Seagulls' house would not be impacted by erosion for 50 years, they felt there was a critical demand. As your findings said in part, the factors in the text of the criterion are not particularly helpful in determining a need for riprap. There are examples, though, of code that defines this well, such as Oregon State's, which requires property rate of erosion to impact a house within only 3 years to be considered for armoring. That's an example of very specific and actionable language that we need in our code so that applicants, staff, and decision makers can fairly communicate with applicants and evaluate shoreline armoring. Another example is our shoreline stabilization standards priority list. First one, proper maintenance of existing vegetation. Second, planting of riparian vegetation. Third, vegetative riprap. Fourth, non-vegetative riprap, and last, bulkhead and seawalls. While on the Planning Commission, Commissioner Ostrander commented that vegetative riprap was in the middle of the priority list and therefore a reasonable solution. Planning Director Steve Sokolowski also said that when working with an applicant, he believes vegetative riprap is a nice compromise. It's easy to understand how they've reached their conclusions. The thing is, however, the state has not been approving non-vegetative riprap for a while now. They also are not approving bulkheads and seawalls on residential property. So vegetative riprap is in fact the highest level of armoring allowed by the state. This was also stated in Seagulls' engineering report. These examples show how poorly our current code is serving this community. A moratorium on hard armoring shoreline structures would provide a smart way to focus our attention on positive change. Applicants would still be able to apply for nature-based solutions like the many examples in Cannon Beach, which have been effective for decades. And I would also mention that 2 bills have just passed the House. One has been signed by the governor. The second is awaiting her signature, that are to support at the DCLD and OPRD level nature-based solution development and code language. The state is doubling down on nature-based solutions. Cannon Beach has a chance to be a leader. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the reason I wanted to see this on the agenda is because I think that until we have a code in place that is operable and that is reflective of the state's policy and other state agencies like the LCD and parks, that we should have a moratorium on what is the highest level currently, because seawalls and riprap are no longer even in the mix. And so just until we figure this out, so we have criteria that we can use to determine, you know, if somebody is, if riprap really is a critical need, vegetative riprap. But at this point, we just don't have, we have no definition of what a critical need is. We don't have, enough, frankly, knowledge, and myself included. I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert on shoreline armoring. I would like to have a lot more education on it, and that's why we have this, I'm hoping that a lot of that will be provided when we have our our educational session on is the 15th,
July 15th.
July 15th, that the community is invited to. It would be really interesting, I think, for those who are concerned about the viability and future of our shorelines here in Cannon Beach. And so I think in the meantime, I know that there's going to be applications for riprap just because we still are unclear. So it's still ambiguous, so now's the time for people to try and sneak in under the radar. I'm not saying that that's necessarily negative, I understand why people would do it, and I know that that's how lawyers are. So, I was hoping that we could discuss the idea of having a moratorium until we have a comprehensive, ordinance in place. So I'm here to hear what other people think.
So based on the discussion or the decisions that have been made, in my opinion, we've been violating our city ordinances. We put together a list of things people have to do in order to do that, and then we denied it anyways. So a moratorium essentially puts in place what we're already doing by violating our code, by not approving something that someone jumped through the hoops that are in our code to do. So it would, in essence, in practice, it would be, my opinion would be no different than what we're currently doing right now. Except for we're telling people, don't even bother applying because we're not gonna approve it, as opposed to right now, we tell people, this is the things you need to do to get approved, we'll deny your links.
No, what we're telling people is until we have a code that makes sense.
No, I get that, but right now we're telling people, hey, this is the steps you need to do, these are the 10 steps.
Then we say no.
And then we say no.
We don't find you critical need.
Exactly, and
Different counselors have interpreted.
exactly, and so they're continually getting denied.
Right.
When there seems to be a path, and it appears to be a path,
And there is.
and they're getting denied, and so moratorium gets rid of that false hope.
Right,
It's there for
and they
people.
know that.
They can protect their property when they can't.
We have to wait until, that they have, I wouldn't characterize it like that way, that they think they take their property and they can't, because I don't believe that we denied anybody the ability to take their property. According to what I've read, what these, different engineers have said or not said. But regardless of that, that's just a difference of opinion. I think that we have to have an ordinance where it isn't just a matter of, well, I interpret critically this way and you interpret it that way, where we have a clear path, and we don't have that now. And so in order to save all of the time and energy for the planning commission and for the council, wrestling with an ordinance that is not effective at all, it seems to make sense to have a moratorium until it's rewritten and we understand it, and rewritten with expertise, not just, this is gonna require a lot of expertise, and there are experts at Crest, Orga, Department of Land Use Development, all those agencies and parks who are, state parks who are willing to help with this. So I would say that it makes sense to have a moratorium until, if we're gonna get it done. I don't know exactly when. I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later, as Gary said, because there are people who need to run on this application and they need to know what the parameters are. So, and I don't know what the parameters are. It will end up being. That remains to be seen. So I think that at this time, it makes sense to have a moratorium. Now, I know that we have talked about moratoriums in the past. And I know that it seems to me that, it's not a big favorite with our attorney, it never has been. But I still think it's something we should do. I mean, it's not that it's illegal or that, it's just, it's a hassle putting a moratorium. But I think it's a hassle that's worth doing in order for us to just have a pause until we have everything that makes sense. Otherwise, we're gonna have constant definitions, personal definitions of critical need, personal definitions of when there's a threat. we need to have something in place, and I'd like to know from the experts, and hoping on 15th, we'll get more information on, you know, what really is a good, what is the effects of riprap, and what are the effects, on the ocean shore. Because I think all of us care about protecting the ocean shore.
As far as the moratorium, and I don't have a problem with that, I agree. I'm assuming that that would not include any applications that are currently placed or any appeals that are currently in process. It would be a going forward date. And how long, I think one question that would need to ask of Ashley is, how long can a moratorium actually be in place? I think, yeah, I'm just looking in your direction, Steve, because you're calling.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. But I think that that's going to help be a determining factor. Is there, because I know like with an insurance company for earthquake, if there is an event, then they put a moratorium on being able to obtain that type of insurance. But there is a limit of time that they can put that on. So we would need to look at what that limit of time for the moratorium would be and make sure that that's enough time for us to get the code rewritten. And I also, I want to make sure, and I'm sure this is probably true, but I do want to make sure that when we hear from our experts that we have unbiased opinions.
I don't think our experts are gonna tell us, they work for state agencies, they're not gonna tell us how we should write our code.
Oh, no, I know that.
Give us information.
Right.
They're not, they have no advice, they're just giving us scientific information. Best available science, that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, do you have an idea of how long? Like, how much progress has been made on anything related to shoreline stabilization codes in terms of clarifying that, and how much more time? Is this 2 years, is this 1 year?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, the only thing I would say is just take a look at our examples of wetlands and trees and things like that in terms of the length of time that, a zoning ordinance amendment takes. Those have taken right now 7 months plus so far just with those sections. And I would anticipate that, we're not even talking about private property owners who are going to be impacted by the new rules. So I'm sure they'll have plenty to say on this as well. So in all of our discussions, we've had a proposal and tweaks to that, so it takes time, and it's gonna have to go through that DLCD notice, it has to go through the plan commission, then it comes to you guys before it gets adopted. So I don't have a great time period. The only other question I don't know is how it relates to whether or not we have to open the Ford Dune management plan, which is a comprehensive plan amendment, which is an additional layer of approval and process and time. And, I would imagine that with the time of year that it is, we'll probably start to, see things in the near future as far as probably repairs mostly at this point in time. A lot of the repairs are fairly easy if they're not re-engineering and they're maybe adding stone or sand or what have you. It's gonna be, when they start submitting to prepare for the real engineered structures, whether it's the burritos, whether it's the proposed vegetative riprap or what they come in with. So I don't have a great, I guess that's a very roundabout answer of saying, I don't know, but it's taken lengthy, a decent amount of time for those other ones, and I would expect it to be similar.
If I recall correctly, because I worked on the wetlands ordinance, and that happened actually relatively fast. Because we also had the help of experts in that, actually Marcy brought on some wetland biologists to help with it, and so was able to go through quite quickly. The tree ordinance is taking a lot longer because there's an intersection with housing, and there's, you know.
I'm not saying,
Yeah, but, so I don't know what the timeline is on that necessarily, but I think that this, I'm anticipating this would be something using experts as well,
yeah,
which would, accelerate, you know, coming up with something, because you have all this expertise going into it. So, I mean, that's all, again, I could not say exactly how long it's working. And I don't know the answer to Deanna's question at all about how long the moratorium can last.
I'm gonna leave that answer to the attorney, because I don't have slightest idea.
And I think that's a very good question, because.
And that's gonna be our languages attorney that will.
It might be Melissa as well.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I
it's
would
gonna
imagine,
take
and,
at least a year.
you know, I mean, I don't know,
Well, and then at that point, even if we have.
but it would be a length of time, sorry.
No, that's okay, you're fine. Even at that, then if it's hearings are involved in things, somebody could come back and appeal our decision, correct?
Anytime we're doing any of the amendments and things like that, there's always an appeal, an ability for someone to appeal. And whether, you know, typically a lot of times, a council decision would be appealed to the state land use, board of appeals. So that's always, I mean, we've been there before, and that's not so far on our existing legislative matters that we've done with wetlands. So far on the other amendments, we haven't had that so far, but is it possible? Yes, it is.
But if indeed what we come up with, or what the final product is with all the input of all these state agencies, I think that would put the city in a much stronger position, because we're not just pulling it out of the hat, we're using the expertise of all these agencies, that's what they do for a living. So I'm not that concerned about appeal, because I'm anticipating that whatever we do will have the benefit of best available science and legality behind it.
That was mostly just a question of knowledge.
So, I mean, should we explore with our land use attorney what the feasibility is of a moratorium, or at least ask and find out? Is that?
I mean, I think that's something we have to do, especially if we have a new land. I mean, we know what Bill.
I mean, if you guys want, whether Bruce or I, or if you want someone from a staff perspective to reach out, if that's acceptable, we can do that.
I think we need to do that.
Yeah.
We need to do that. You know, there's the legal risk, and then I'm curious about, you know, if it's a risk to property as well. I feel like this discussion is probably a little premature, since we got you know, we're gonna be learning about the best available science soon, and I would certainly like to hear that, or.
Sure, but I didn't keep it back. That's real,
Yeah,
we're
no, I-
asking.
We have to ask at some point, so I'm fine asking
Yeah.
now, and I'll stand by my quote, and I quoted twice now. That, we should deal with this code sooner rather
Yeah.
than later, because it's frustrating to get an appeal. And just have it be so vague in so many areas. It's just, it doesn't feel objective.
Very objective.
Yeah, I think you're still gonna see us, if things get denied, and they believe that they've submitted the paperwork that they believe, similar to what they're doing now. They believe they're meeting the criteria, and that's why you see appeals that come to you. Whether they're, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm saying that is the opinion of those who've been denied.
Well, that's for any ordinance.
It is,
Yeah, I'm sure it's impossible to make it.
yeah,
Perfect, but
no, all I'm trying to say is, you know, there's a lot of times, even throughout this whole code audit process that we think, hey, everything's gonna be clear because we're gonna change it and that's gonna make things even. There are some things, no question, but these are hard decisions and things are gonna come before.
It's not gonna be perfect, but it's
Right, right.
better than it is now.
And I'm all for that.
Yeah, some of the demand and need, and then the
Yeah.
order of priorities, as Eric was saying. You know, some people think they're doing the right thing, they're doing the lesser solutions, and then they get denied, so. I think we should ask and understand those risks, both to property and legally, but. I hope Lisa's correct and we can fast track this, so it makes it a little bit easier for us to deal with situations.
I think the number is gonna come back in like 3 to 6 months is gonna be your moratorium.
I have
So,
no idea, it's nothing like insurance for land use, so.
yeah, well,
Let's wait.
The one thing I would say is if when it's like perfectly, if it went perfectly, there's a 35-day notice to DLC. There's, prior to the first evidentiary hearing at the plan commission. Anyone can ask for a continuance at that time. So let's take the continuance out for a second because it's gonna go perfect. So we have 35 days, then we have 20 days for a notice before council, so it's probably, I would say, 2 to 3 months till it gets to council, and then when the adoption of the ordinance comes in, that's another 30 days. So in an ideal, perfect situation, you're talking 4 months. I don't think that's gonna happen.
From the time it's introduced, not
That's
that.
right.
and on the land use website, it does say that moratoriums are generally temporary. So,
Yeah.
but that's a good number to know, about 4 months. I have a question while we're on, shoreline. The shoreline topic. In the presidents and, there's, cliff, there's pipes hanging out of the side of the beach. Or the dune, I'm not even sure what that is, I mean, it's erosion. Is that being addressed in any way? Is that a safe thing?
Leave that to Bruce or maybe Sharon to address that, because I'm not, I don't know. I believe the answer is yes, but,
I didn't hear the question.
I don't know if you want.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, there's some questions about some of the storm drainage pipes that come out of dunes and things like that in the residentials. And if there's any type of action that's taking place or things like that. I personally am not involved in that, so I don't know the answer.
That'd be Sharon.
Yeah.
I think that the, one of the problems is those are not allowed. And so I'm not sure if you could get a permit to recover those.
What aren't allowed?
It might be, it might be one of those ones where, whether or not you want to talk to Karen directly or the next time she's here, or even at maybe the 15th. It might be one of those ones that it might be good to hear from her.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear an update, but it was my understanding that this is a work in progress, that we acquired land that's going to be required rather than just getting a utility easement. We acquired the land that it's going to take to access some of those areas and make the changes that, but it would be nice to have an update from Karen on where that's at. I know it involved Oregon State Parks and, right.
An update.
But I would suggest that between now and the 15th, that we get a definition on a moratorium. We give an update from Public Works on the topics of the outfalls, okay? And then we encourage you to make it more possible to come to the 15th presentation and listen and learn. And then continue this discussion after that.
Yeah, I want to hear, what the risks are, you know, both to property and the legal risk.
Is there anything else anybody wants to find out?
On the 15th, is part of the agenda or part of that, is it gonna include the presentations from the presenters?
I would have to check with Diana, I don't know what her plan is for that, check with her.
With the educational, yeah, that is for the presenter.
No, he wants to know that their
If
presentation.
the presentation will be included, packet,
Oh, I don't know.
yeah, so it's beforehand, that questions.
Diana.
Would be good to be able to.
Okay, anything else on shoreline stabilization? Okay. Thank you. Yep. Want to push break? Okay. Okay, we're going to continue. Okay, next we have a short-term rental cap discussion. Lisa, would you like to lead us off on that?
Well, it's fine. The couple of things I just wanted to say. The first one is, I really didn't understand the public comment about, people having a vested interest in not having a town, council members. Maybe I misunderstood that, but that's what I heard. And I can't believe any council member heard who has any vested interest one or the other personal in whether or not it's town. So I don't think there's any conflict there at all. But also, I will say that, the same issues that apply to Haystack Heights apply to presidentials, they apply to North End, they apply to the second RV park, they apply to Colvana. So I think every community here, not Haystack Heights more than anybody else, but all of the communities have a desire for neighborhood and a community feeling in their areas. I live in Colvana, I have a 3-year-old child who lives a couple doors down from me and is equally affected when cars, you know, if rental people are visiting, just go, you know, shooting down the street. Talked to another elderly woman, just the other day in Colvana who is terrified out there when she's working on her rose garden because people come careening around the corner of her street. So I think that all of the communities, I think there's, you know, these same issues, and I absolutely think we need to have a cap. I have never wanted personally 200 amount cap, and I've been very vocal about wanting something lower, but that's just on one person. So I don't know what that cap will end up being, but I agree there has to be a cap, and we have, again, it has to happen soon. Because if you don't do it quickly, then people will find out that there's going to be a cap and they will immediately start applying for short-term rental permits. And so I think we have to act fast for not just for neighborhood health and culture, but also for the issues that Michelle spoke about, how it affects the housing market. So I think both of those things are really important. And I'd like to see us move forward with the cap even before we do the housing limit. It's gonna take a long time. It is, I think we have to do a cap now. I think it has to be, you know, whatever the majority of the council members want. You know, it was more in the 100 to 150 range, but I mean, I don't know what the rest of the council feels.
So during the retreat, I mentioned my interest in density restrictions and exclusion zones like seaside follows. I'm in favor of a cap. I don't know what number to settle on for that, but we had quite a bit of public comment about Haystack Heights. I've had a couple of people approach me about the area around the RV park, for the neighborhood that's there. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't explore the option of exclusion zones and density restrictions in other locations in town that's to try to preserve the character of the community. And I talked with one of the owners of one of the vacation companies who said that they've turned down 2 applications of people that wanted to them to manage their property because they're in Haystack Heights. They said, no, we're not interested in managing there. So some of the rental companies, I only talk for myself, I know what the rest of them feel like, but some of the rental companies also feel strongly that there should be exclusion zones within the community. I don't know how many of them feel that way. The one that I talked to was.
So when you say rent or the property man.
Yeah, property management, yeah, the, one of the short-term
So
rental
when
property.
you say the people who live in areas who want community in their neighborhoods too, like residential or Toledano or. You know,
That's where the
what
density
do you
restrictions.
say to them if you're just gonna, have exclusionary zones?
Well, my idea is following a similar model to Seaside, you have exclusion zones there, there's not east of 101. Are similar to that, the name was two specific neighborhoods around the RV park in Haystack Heights, and then a density restriction. So you don't have, my neighborhood, I'm 14 homes, 6 of them are rentals. Within 14 homes, which is a rather high number, but, and I'm within the residential, so it's, there would be some density limit to that to try to encourage that, but there are obvious places like places in the residential, places in the ocean front along Toledano that are likely to just be vacation rentals anyway, just by virtue of their location and all that stuff, so allowing them to have a density maximum for an area.
Why not just cap it at a low number and then you're done with it? Just have a low cap and move on.
Then I think the density restriction gives the fairness. It kind of evens it out. I mean, you could have exclusions, but density restrictions. And that gives people, once something like that goes into place, it gives them, there's a buyout time almost kind of, I guess you would put it, as so they would slowly go off. You know, they'd have however many years or however that works.
So change of ownership,
Yeah.
through that way.
The sunset. Yeah, somebody mentioned, licenses going with the property, that doesn't exist anymore.
No,
Yeah,
each individual owner, if there's a change of owner, has to come in. We don't have any more 5 years left. I believe we have 42 lifetime that are still out there. And so permits, are not transferable. And so when those lifetimes come due and someone else wants to come in, they are able to get a 14-day SDR at this time.
And one of these lifetimes expired last month, right, so.
Yes.
It's like 43, 42.
Yep.
I won't stop talking about this and make something happen. I think a cap, and I also think density limitations are both kind of no-brainers to me. And I don't know what the process looks like. I think we've talked about this a few times, but some of this involves code, but is making a cap, setting a cap just more about the process that we need to set up?
Well, it's still under land use.
It's still under land use, so we're still going through the same, process that we talked about with shoreline stabilization with trees. Anything that's dealing with the zoning or ordinance and is a land use decision, so it's gotta go through that process. Really comes down to whether or not, we're getting close on the housing, whether or not it makes sense at one of these upcoming joint work sessions, whether or not we start to emphasize what other sections of the code, I've said this to you guys in the past, you're probably tired of hearing it, we wanna try to start doing it section by section. But there are these other areas that have a bit more emphasis, and maybe those are the areas that need to be more focused on in order to start moving them forward.
I really don't know where we go.
Yeah.
Because I know, because I'm on that group, I know that it's gonna be a huge discussion, it's been going for a while.
Yeah.
And so that we really, and this is something we can do right now, if we wanna set up exclusionary zones afterwards, which will take a lot more time. Because you're gonna have a lot of people who don't like, who want to be in an exclusionary zone.
Sure.
And won't be. So that's gonna cause a lot more discussion, so I think that a cap is a simple thing, well, relatively simple. Can you remind us, Steve, why we didn't move it into the business license? I don't remember what.
Because it was considered a land use decision, and regardless whether it was in a different municipal section of the code, or if it was in the zoning ordinance, it's considered a land use decision, and therefore it has to go through the DLCD process.
Well, and that's only because in our comprehensive plan, it calls out.
It identifies it, right,
So that.
right,
passes us.
right, exactly, that's right.
Was required.
Yeah.
In order
So we
to,
have to.
Yes.
yeah, which, I don't know.
So I guess, if it comes down to it, really. I think probably the thing to do is, there's no reason why. Staff couldn't potentially just come up with some language with a cap and potentially start that process, but. I guess what I would like to hear from. You guys, whether it's tonight or some other time, what that number should be. Or what I should start it at, or if you want me to do a number and then we have the discussion based on that. I would certainly encourage anyone who likes to step up, because I'm sure some people have something to say regardless of what the number is.
I
So,
would like us to come up with a number tonight and
Okay.
then start with the.
sounds good.
Yeah, I would like to prioritize a cap rather than waiting for every change that we're talking about now. Let's get the cap, let's get it in place. It seems like that should be a simple thing, although there will be a process.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna create a waiting list.
Well, I'm gonna be the one, putting it together, but, with direction from you guys, so.
I guess I really just think that we need to cap it somewhere lower than where we're at.
I agree.
So that the answer right now,
Let each of us give a number.
okay,
Yeah.
Can we start with Gary?
I'll start, 150.
175.
I'm at 175.
I'm at 125.
She might pay.
I don't know, I was thinking around where we're at now, but.
And how many,
Which is 195.
195, how many the long term do we have dropping off this year?
But, you know what, there's, like the 5-year, it really comes down at the time that the property, transfers. So they will not just come off on like, say, January 1. It's
Right.
when you or I, if we have one sell the house, that's the time
So
that,
they just automatically renew?
yes, that's correct. The lifetime is just, yeah.
Do they have to reapply each year and?
They have to
Every
subdivision
subdivision is inspected every 5 years.
and short term.
In short term,
Yes.
they stop the process and they get
Right.
back every 5 years, they stop the court.
But it's just their grandfather with the lifetime extension.
Yeah, so they would have to decide to come off or start the process.
So we have 1 at 195, 2 at 175, 1 at 150, and 1 at 140.
She went down to try to average it out.
I was trying to. No, it was 100, I was up.
Just take all the numbers, average them out by 5.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that, when someone asks, can I have a short-term license? Right now, the answer is no. You can put it go on a waiting list, so somewhere less than what we've got is mine.
So do we let the people that have licenses currently renew them, even if they stay at 195, like it stays there? And then as they sell off those properties, then they will fall away?
That would be my take on this, is that, everyone would continue to be allowed, because they were prior to the ordinance change.
Right.
But as they would say, sell, and now I wanna come in after the cap has been determined. Because we're over maybe the number that the cap is, they will not have the opportunity to apply at that time.
What about inheritance? What if they pass the house goes down to their children?
I'm trying to think, I think, yeah, it's change of ownership, so basically what it is there's a title on the property. And if that changes, so if you're like, say, feeding it to your son or daughter or something to that effect, that would be considered a transfer.
Okay.
So if, I had a property and I had a license and I decided to put my property in a trust, that's not really a deed transfer, or is it?
It is a transfer, it's not.
Right?
Well,
So,
these are all the questions that come up with a cat.
right?
Solving. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying, so these are the things to think about, because we're gonna be, these questions are gonna be coming.
I think we have to be in there, like, remember the trust for the same people that owned it, I think it's okay,
It's,
there's some.
it's just kind of a lateral
I think
transfer.
there's some specific,
Yeah.
I don't remember for sure, but I remember talking about this at one time, I think they have some language like that.
It kind of makes sense to me that you may have something like that, or that, but then, if the property is in a trust, so let's say the property's in a trust, the kids inherit it, but that property stays in that trust, it doesn't change their license.
I have to find.
I went down a rabbit.
That's the exact rabbit hole that I went down.
There might be some language in here about sale or transfer. Permit holder may transfer ownership of the real property to a trustee, a limited liability company. And not be subject to permanent revocation pursuant to this section, so long as the transfer lives and remains the only owner of the entity. So, I mean, there's some things in here, I'll have to look at it a little closer. Digest that.
Mhm. Because if you took your house and put it in a trust, you would wanna be able to maintain the rights you have to that
Sure.
property currently, and then going, yeah.
So there is, a particular definition, so it'll be important to maybe take a peek at that when we're having this discussion, so we can make sure that that information gets to you.
We are a trust and transferring ownership, though, you really are, so.
Well, many of these properties are already, I went through and looked at a while, almost every single one of them is currently in a trust or an LLC.
Yeah,
And the LLCs, there is providing liability coverage for themselves by putting in an LLC, so they're not personally liable for stuff, which is reasonable, if you're gonna rent it out, but that my question was the second follow-up was, it's gonna maintain the same owner of the LLC, it's the owners of that LLC is what changes. And so that LLC is potentially getting handed down to the next generation, whatever, but it's still whatever. Can't Beach LLC owns this single property.
That's a loophole that has to be closed.
Yeah, it is a loophole. My question was, does that loophole exist? I couldn't figure it out.
I thought there was something like you only take one or once or something.
I think you're right, Jen,
There's
because I feel like I
something-
read that, yeah.
Yeah, there is some language that covers it, I just don't remember.
yeah, well, there's a sale or transfer in a definition, so it's something that I guess we'll all be looking at closely.
And so did we come up with a number, 175?
Well, Bruce said the average is 164, right?
What did you all found?
So then we wrap it up when it's 160.
Well, Gary just hiked his number, I'm pushing that.
175 to start. Go once, go twice, lower, yes, please.
Lower.
Lower.
175.
You guys have just.
Three of us are
Listen,
175 and above.
what are you gonna
We'll get public comment.
Yeah, that's right.
We have numbers right now, we heard a public comment.
I just wanna make some progress on this.
Oh, we have a staff member that would like to say.
Just wanna add one thing. My job. Alright, but there will be a financial impact, yes, regardless. Okay, so regardless, so roughly right now, you receive about 600,000 in general fund. So if you were cut it to 150, that would be about 150,000. That's all I'm saying.
So we talked about what you guys want to talk about this again.
Oh, let's figure out a number. Okay, that's all right, I'm done. Yeah. Well, I'm not quite sure.
Well, we have, if the average of all the numbers you said is 160, so maybe it should be 160. If it is 160.
Except there are three of us who say 175 or
Or
more.
higher, so I think we should start at 175.
Because
Because if
if
we-
it's by majority rule, or because we vote that.
Should not, you know.
How about? How about we do 165?
That's something.
Well, and again, one has something that's close that everyone feels, but as this process progresses, there's the ability to go up or down as discussion takes place before an adopted ordinance by council.
165 is a compliment.
Or is everyone okay with 165? Going once? Going twice?
Let's use that number, see what the impact is.
Yeah.
So Tim will have some numbers, we'll.
I have a question. While I'm here. How does everybody feel about, I know that exclusions are gonna be kind of a sticky wicket. But is there any way we could talk about excluding everything east of 1 mile?
Actually, we're lowering the cap. Right now, would stop any new short-term rentals from occurring.
It would stop them, but I guess it wouldn't take away what's already there.
I prefer some,
There's no way to take away the sort of, they just can't renew it.
I prefer a discussion about reducing density so that, no neighborhood is overrun. I mean, I feel the same way about my neighborhood
Right.
as what I'm hearing. It's like,
Okay.
we're almost all full-time residents and business owners and,
And there are people with families, my neighborhood as well.
Oh, I was talking with two of the neighbor kids. They're here for the summer and, they're 6 and 8 or something, and a car came flying up our street, which is 4 blocks.
Yeah.
But I do think, I agree with the density, I agree with capping the STRs. I do think that we need to really isolate a couple of neighborhoods, for exclusion. I really think we need to think about that.
let's make it mine.
Hmm?
Make it my neighborhood.
Your neighborhood?
No, and again, everyone's got totally valid points on this. This is a challenging situation. I think the first thing I heard though was setting the cap to at least get to a
Yes.
number. Because this is gonna be a much larger discussion when we start talking density and
Yes.
exclusion, so, I believe the direction you're giving me, and I
Yes.
wanna understand from you is to start with the cap.
Yes.
Lowering.
Lower the cap to 165.
Some of the problem.
Yes.
It's not gonna solve everything,
Right.
but it's.
And then there would be the ability to look at the rest of the STR ordinance throughout the rest of the zoning code amendment process.
Well, and it's not going.
Unless you guys change it. Sign up on that.
I think
Okay,
It's a good first step. All right,
lowering
let's
the
get it.
cap isn't going to take away any licenses that are already in place.
right.
So that's something that I want you guys to understand, that it isn't gonna take away what's already there unless people. Yeah.
And you can't take away the story there, so.
Right.
Because they were put in place, the law is different. So. you
Oh, no,
can't
I
do it.
understand that, yeah, no, I.
Right. As soon as you change ownership, that's a strong.
Okay. You have direction.
Yeah, so
you can do all that.
so what I will do, and Jen, I know you're looking for dates, times, I gotta draft the ordinance. Get it done, I have to send a notice to Department of Land Conservation and Development, so those are the directions I'm taking from you. I don't know a time frame yet, it'll start, but I don't know specifically when it's coming to you and things like that yet. I'll probably work with Melissa from our attorney's office just to make sure, and then just start and get something drafted.
So do you want it, so what his plan is moving forward with planning commission and the other thing, not bringing it back to you before then? Is that good?
It's up to you. I can come back if you wanted to talk it briefly and say, yes, this looks good, move it forward, or I can just start the process. Because I think we all know where we wanna be.
If the only changes to it is a cap, I don't see the line needs to.
I agree.
Come back to us, because it can still have modifications during
Yes.
the pilot phase,
And believe,
once that goes to the plan.
and the cap, when it does come to the public comment phase, I remember from before, there are going to be many people who are against a cap. I mean, there'll be story after story of people saying how they saved up their money and they planned to get short-term rental, now they can't do it. And so there's a lot of, I mean, it's not a done deal.
Right.
It's gonna be, it's gonna have a lot of blowback.
And the other element of that is, it is a measure 65 or 56 notice, which is the one where we have to send the notice to everyone impacted by this reduction.
But is that the 30, is that 35 days or is that longer?
That one is a minimum similar to like the notice we provide to 21 days. It can be, I think, as much as 45 and as less as 1. So what we've been doing so far is oftentimes we're getting the language I never like to send the notice out before the ordinance language is drafted. So oftentimes we're probably in closer to our typical notice of that.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay,
All right,
understand it?
yeah, I understand.
Okay, I have one question.
Oh, Gordon.
And I'm so sorry. So with the licenses, and maybe you just answered this, and I was coughing, and I apologize. Is there, when they come up for renewal, there's a date that it has to be renewed by? Is there a date that it's no longer renewable? Like, what is there a grace period?
Immediately in review.
And if there is not, there should be, and it should be that after that date, it's just not renewable.
Yeah, those, I don't wanna guess, so I'll be able to come back and tell you about this, answer to that question. But, that's all the type of language that I'm talking about here for sunsetting and things like that. I think there are so many things, whether people are getting license suspended or timing, so we just wanna make sure that those, dates are pretty clear.
Yeah.
From an administrative perspective. Right. So I can get back and make sure I can.
So when they get their letter, there is a date in there that says you must renew on this date. I think there are things that happen.
Because it's a new application, they don't have it. So that,
I don't remember, but like I looked at this one and it's just like you have to return your forms, please look at payment standard forms by this date. But I know that they're given a deadline in order to do this, and I don't remember what all happened within.
I look at that, but I don't know if there's specific language that says this is, a drop dead date, so that might be something we may need to incorporate. Yes,
So after you do that research, will you send us
sure.
something?
If there's a cap, it would change. I mean, it could, because without a cap, it doesn't matter, it's like it's be applied or
Right,
whatever.
Right.
They haven't stopped
Right.
from getting a license, but
Right.
if there's a cap and they don't renew by the date they're supposed to.
well, and now it's gonna be that much more important that information is in there, because if a person, doesn't meet that, they're going to the back of the line. So it's gonna be real important that that's clear, so we have that documentation in there, whether that's, like I said, now or future, we gotta make sure that's in there from an administrative perspective.
So just so you guys know, there is also, we have a link renewal notice that we sent that basically says you received this notice on this date, you did not reply. If you do not complete this form by this date, you will be immediately, your permit will be immediately disclosed. So
they
whether it's
usually get a
approved or
warrant.
not, we can have it
Right.
processed at this point.
I think what I'm saying though is that if it's not there, I'd like to make sure that we have it, because I would anticipate that if someone loses it, they're gonna seek every remedy they can if there's something not there. So I think we wanna just make sure that that's in there to be clear.
Okay.
All right.
Ready to move on? Thank you.
All right, night.
Thank you all for urging this conversation.
Okay, next slide.
We're gonna talk about special event permits, so next.
It's gonna be lovely. Thank you very much. Everybody want to talk? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's do.
Continue now.
It just, you just gotta wait it out.
Okay, we're still meeting.
We're still recording.
Okay, next we have special event permit.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. There, what we found is, I'm just trying to do the Reader's Digest version here, is that we have something in the code that talks about special events. And it's not terribly useful, and we're doing a number of other things. For example, the summer concert series, things like that. It doesn't really comprehend those kind of things. And so, what the suggestion is that we, take time to take a look at it, see what it is we're trying to accomplish. What's interesting is you've had something like the summer concert series, which is not specifically said that you can do that. But you can have up to 4 pop-ups on your private property. So, which way, did I have that right, Jen?
Well. So, let me tell you how we do it, maybe that's, is, things like the weekly movie nights, the concerts, remember when we had coasters doing theater nights? We allowed them to do that because it's private, public property. When it's on, soccer is another good example, the men's soccer league. When it's on private property, the code specifically calls out that you can have 4 permits a year, up to 4 events on each permit with a spread of 30 days. So on a private property side, we've been adhering to that, but on the public property side, we've been kind of allowing it to happen, but it really doesn't drive what the code says. So we just kind of wanna look at the code, see where we can fix it, because there are things that I know you guys, nobody wants to stop the movies and the concerts, those are the kind of community events everyone wants. But some of the other things, we need, I think, more clarification in our code and, what is it we're trying to do? And also it's a great time to see if you want to make any changes. Because you are allowed on a private property to do 4 applications for 4 events, 30 days apart. So that means somebody could do 16 pop-up barbecues on a private property if they met all of the state guidelines through, the health department, the prepared food tax. I mean, that is actually a possibility there, folks.
I remember when this was passed as during form, I spoke out. And I was very concerned with the soccer league, that it explicitly prohibits the soccer league with the way that it's written. And I was glad to see that we, had policy that decided that community or public property was not to follow this exactly the letter that I think we need to correct that, so we're actually following what our ordinance says as opposed to just making up a policy that we kind of follow.
And the big thing with the men's soccer league is it has grown so big, that it's making And people contacted me and said, we want to do it 2 nights a week. And how do you say no? Yeah. So, you know, if they're doing it 2 nights a week, every week it's grown so much. And those are the kind of community events that everyone wants to see happening. But the way the code is written technically it shouldn't happen, but I think the best way I told Bruce today, we have been consistently following our code inconsistently. So, while our interpretation is probably pretty loose, we have been consistent with that interpretation as far as public events versus private events.
And garage sales aren't under that.
No, garage sales are completely different, so they have a separate permit that they go through, and I think you're only allowed a 3 year or something.
2 a year.
2 a year, okay.
So separate code for public property versus private property, is that one of the issues?
I think that would be helpful,
Yeah.
because there is a difference between your public property and private property.
But
And
we should be limiting the
Oh,
private property things much more where we want to allow soccer and we want to, I don't know, allow the concerts and movies and.
Things that build community.
And do we really want the, you know, local surf shop, if that was the case, I guess maybe that's a bad example, but, doing hot dog dinner every weekend all summer,
right.
even if they meet all the criteria. Probably not, right?
And that's when it falls under outdoor merchandising, that's a great example, because there's a huge difference between a hot dog stand at a pop-up and a non-profit selling sweatshirts during a different event as an outdoor merchandising. And we don't have anything that differentiates that in our code, outdoor merchandising is the other things. And so it's allowed, but it is different between the hot dog and the sweatshirts, So this is basically the introduction of this, to kind of get everyone thinking about it. When Ashley and I talked about, the pop-up with the barbecue situation, she said, you know, you really need to get this from council, because we have been consistently applying it consistently. Get this in front of them, because it is gonna take a little bit of work to really get everything nailed down, and also good to let you know that, you know, this is how we have been administrating it. Community events, public property, I've been trying this in the private.
I think a definition of community event on public property, including within that code is important, because it could be a fundraising event that isn't necessarily, it's open to the public, but isn't necessarily a community event. How does that qualify versus something that's literally the soccer games, like the park, just people gathering together and enjoying soccer.
Yeah, and then
But more clearly.
is that something that's staff wants to do right in context with the?
We'll need, guidance from the council. But it's something that we agree on.
So if you guys are on board with, you know, having the separate code versus private property versus public property, you know, we can start working with Ashley on that. If you guys wanna see something, and we have to check with Ashley about how put the time is and no restrictions on outdoor merchandising, like maybe we don't allow other merchandise, if that's possible, those are the kind of things you wanna see. We can start the process on this, but I will be honest, this isn't top priority, so we're probably would be back a little bit, but we do wanna get this finished and approved before the next summer season starts.
Like a non-profit versus profit.
Because we'll see if that's an option, because that is a big difference, like we said, the sweatshirts and the other things versus. Is that, what direction you guys would like to be?
Yeah, everybody will get that, yeah.
There's another part to this too, is that like the serving food at the soccer games. That's a very popular thing.
But they're not charging.
Well, so they are now.
Oh.
But what we did is I talked with, Paula. And I explained to her that, you know, when we first did this with Rosia, it was donation only, but my understanding is you guys wanna charge, and if you charge, you can, but you have to go through the prepared food tax process. But because they're a nonprofit, there is an exemption, but they have to fill out the exemption paperwork and reminded them about all the health codes and things they have to follow, which they've already been through the process on. So we did talk with them, but that is a great example of the difference between nonprofit food versus a, like, profit food.
And those things, and I agree with Lisa, those things need to be spelled out. And to do, it's something she's always. And thought out, yeah, because there's a lot. Think it out, then spell it out.
Okay, so I have private versus public events, property, that property minded, nonprofit versus profit, merchandising/food. So that basically covers the big, we can come up with other things as we're going to do that, but that would be the big start.
Yeah, sure.
There, do you mention community event versus?
I was kind of doing private versus public, but I was thinking more of land, so let's do event/land. So, there's difference between the wedding, at the park. Yeah.
Versus,
Yes.
soccer inside, property.
Perfect, so that gives us some direction.
I have a question about like a wedding park. If when they fill out an application for something like that, do they have to, and maybe I'm going too far down the rabbit hole, but do they have to disclose whether they're having a caterer or not? And if they are bringing someone in from outside of Cannon Beach, is that caterer required to collect the prepared food tax from them?
So the current application does not specify that, but we have some that already happen with the Buffalo barbecue, we have more generalized statements that we put in there. But yes, if they had it catered for somebody out of the area, if they were doing food, they would be subject to prepared food tax. So we actually brought us some generic things, so we've been plugging those in and a lot of other stuff. Something else to bring up. Our code actually says that through a special event permit, your parks code, you don't have to follow the parks code. But there may be some things that we still want them to follow the parks code, so that statement is a little bit maybe too broad, and that's something we should also look at.
But that's the first code in relation to like the auto tents and lighting and sound.
Stay on and things like that, but to make it blanket statement, you're exempt from the parks code, maybe a little bit too much. Yeah. But yeah, we are putting more more condition of approval on permits, even if they don't have it, just in preemptive measures. But yeah, we have a lot of them now.
Sure. I'm sure it's gonna be a handbook to have an event.
The special event code actually says there's a handbook, and there's never been a handbook.
Oh.
So it was a book Jeff was
There will
working
be
on, named after another city, and it never got finished, so we're supposed to have it in the book, which we don't even have, so there's a lot of things in the code that was a great idea at the time, and it just never came complete.
Is that document exists somewhere that can be rebuilt upon by staff, or is it starting from scratch?
I looked and I found Jeff's old records on it, and he has a lot of examples from other cities, but he didn't actually start. Yeah, but we have a lot of old information that we can pull from. I also looked to see what other cities did. Like,
Do you think a handbook is necessary?
No, I think a better application is necessary.
Yeah.
And so I think we can cover a lot of things in the application process.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend time on it. Okay. First, I don't know who's gonna read it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, is that enough direction?
Yeah.
Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have monthly status report. Are there any questions on the monthly status report?
Yeah, I have a question. I think I had this answered once before, and I can't remember what the answer is, but when it comes to like station activity, and it says 2025 and 2024, is that 2024 through the same date, or is it for all of 2024 and 2025 is just through August?
That's for the month,
For the month?
yes.
Oh, it's not paid.
So that's the May 24 and May 25.
Okay, it's just the monthly
Yep,
for the station activity.
yep.
So in 1 month, you had 151 people walk in.
Yes.
Wow.
We would have had more last month, if we could find that new station.
Another bad
But the incoming calls, just maybe half of those line and the rest.
Parking tickets would be a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and that was the other day, the day that accident, she had 58 calls that day in one day. Wow. Yeah.
Are food related?
I know it was an accident, but,
Oh,
Make a consideration.
yes,
Yeah.
but just in one day, wow.
Okay, other questions on the monthly status report?
Is there any possibility that, included with that, in the monthly status report, there could be a little bit of expansion around City Hall Police Station and metrics met, metrics exceeded, metrics falling behind, sort of, that thing of monthly,
In terms of,
in terms of construction progress? Just on the two projects, it just as one sentence.
Yeah, what we've talked with PNC to do also is that we are gonna have them come every 2 months to once a quarter to actually go through both projects completely with you. And so, that will happen. The first one will be the August work session, and then it'll be either 2 or 3 months after that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because the report's written a month before, about a month before that, the latest information here as, so that we could have more of the.
Yeah, and that's the goal. We talked again with PNC this morning and that was, so we'll probably bring CD in also and just go through the whole process where we are progress wise, et cetera.
good,
They will be going to silent this part tomorrow, so we might go down straight initials. But I'm interested, we can do that stuff.
Yeah, all the structural is in and ready to be concrete.
yeah, that's exciting.
Is there a date for the 4 at City Hall?
They're gonna start the form next week. Yeah.
Okay, so the following possibility.
Yeah, so it'll probably be a few weeks after that, right, from the start. But yeah, they got all the utilities there, the underground utilities were put in, all the pilings are all in right now, so yeah, they're making really good progress. And Doran, who is the superintendent at the City Hall, has been working very diligently on a float for the Cannon Beach Academy. So it's gonna be quite something to see. It's gonna be a power show. It's gonna be pretty awesome.
It is so cool.
It is really cool. Yeah,
Good.
really excited.
Okay. Any other questions on the monthly status report? So on mayor communications, our meeting where we had a public hearing on the short term. Transient option tax, I received a rather a long email about how I cut the first talking after the public hearing was over. And so I just thought, I'm just gonna say this publicly, that when we have a public hearing, once the public hearing is closed, there can be no other comments made. And we'll try to make sure those people are muted after that, so we don't have that happen again. Does anybody have anything for counselor communications?
Well, I don't know, I guess this is, I had communication from somebody again, saying that they were very concerned about speeding on the street. And they felt, at risk because of it. It was an elderly woman and,
That was speeding.
no. You know, and it was in the Tolban area and it's a wide road and it's paved and I just, you know, I didn't know what to tell her because you know, none of us want to see that. Yeah, it happens a lot and I don't know. I mean, you can't have a officer at every single street all summer long. I mean, it's not.
25 miles an hour.
Looks fast when you're saying.
It does, and so that's why, and there was several suggestions from different people about reducing some of the speed limits in residential neighborhoods. And it's very odd to me that on the S curves, if you're going north, no, you're going south on the S curves, there's a speed limit sign of 30 miles per hour. And if you're going north on the S curve for the same area, it's a speed limit for 25 miles an hour.
I'll be having a request into a public works for science match, because that's really. Not 25. Yeah, you should be going into a 25 mile an hour zone when you're entering gas away.
Right, so I think that 25 on the S curves is plenty fast enough.
I think 25 all the way to town will be perfect.
Yeah.
Even downtown?
20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And
15.
If you're lucky.
I actually, we have a lot of people that speed in our neighborhood all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just right there on Spruce between Sunset and Ross. And, I mean, they're cruising. Now, I don't know if they're just trying to get up that hill, they're trying to, in their electric car, trying to get momentum. But one thing that I've noticed, and so I've had a lot of neighbors in our neighborhood complain too about just,
Yeah.
you know, those 10-mile-an-hour gravel streets and people are flying up them at 20 miles an hour. And what do? You know, we've got slow down signs everywhere. I think all of us probably have them in our neighborhoods. But on Hemlock, big problem on Hemlock is people doing U-turns.
Oh, yes.
I probably see at least 6 a day.
What a deputation.
I'm down.
Maybe if we see it, we're addressing the problem, but it's, yeah.
I
Sure.
can't believe that they even think of doing that.
Well, they want to get turned around and it's just, it's incredible to me. It's truly incredible, some of the nonsense. I don't know what people are thinking, but, speeding through town, it just, I mean,
Well, what concerns me a lot on the S curves is liability, because today when I was driving home, you know, through the S curves, there was a family walking in that teeny little shoulder on the west side of the S curves with a stroller, 1% stroller that could barely fit in the, you know, in the right of way there, and the other had a baby in her arms. And I'm just thinking, and people are whipping around that corner. Somebody is going to get hurt. It's sort of inevitable, and it really, that speed limit really, in all honesty, should be 20. Everybody's stopping to look, and then somebody with stopping to look comes through at 25 miles an hour. I had people stop in the S curves to take a picture on the street. And so if the speed limit, the lower the speed limit is, the less of a chance for bad accident. But my biggest concern is pedestrians there. It's really, and there are more and more and more this year. Because we have more people, it seems like we're getting more and more visitors, and they're all parking up in that S-curve area.
well, because we've lost parking, right? So now they're migrating south.
I don't think that's.
Even last summer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think it's.
I mean-
It's that they want to go down to the rock,
It's.
and that's where they want to go down to the rock.
yeah, it's that, but we did lose 90-something parking spaces, so.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, the stop at, Sunset and Hemlock. And there was talk of changing it to a 2-way stop with the northbound traffic being able to continue to flow through. None of that has happened yet. It should be a 3-way stop there. Better flow of traffic. You've got people that have to slow down going through those curves both ways. And traffic was backed clear out onto the highway Monday. It was backed clear out onto the highway off of Sunset. And it's like people lose their mind, don't know how to stop. I mean, you know, you deal with that, but we really need to get something done there soon. I know it has been talked about, but.
Isn't a solution of the process on that?
That's what I'm talking.
I think, that's
Traffic study.
we've got to review. Obviously, we can give our recommendation to the police department for public works. We have to look at and determine whether or not that's appropriate to put up stop signs there. So
Find out where the review is on that, that would be great.
On a positive note on this whole topic, that little stop ahead sign that's, on the south side of the First Street Bridge has really helped. I haven't seen people run that stop sign until today. And they actually, I could just tell by the speed they had coming across the bridge that, they probably couldn't have stopped if they wanted to, and they slowed down pretty good, but I mean, compared to what I've seen in the past, that's a huge improvement, which I'm surprised people that registers with people, but.
You see me sitting there quite a lot.
I was gonna say, there's some police presence there too.
Bring you up to speed on Fourth of July, we probably have people asking about Fourth of July. Or this Friday. I have all hands on deck, I've got 2 officers during the day, plus 3 parking aides. 2 officers are gonna be helping with traffic control at the south end of the parade, so Gallup, Hemlock, Sunset, Hemlock, to prevent any of the things we had happen last year. Parking aides will be assisting with, the parade route down, along with Lieutenant Wilbur and myself. And then I have 7 more coming on, starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the remainder at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And we will be working until at least 2 o'clock in the morning. So we'll have plenty of coverage on the beach and throughout town to address any issues. Signs will be going up on the 3rd. The Sinclairs are putting out signs throughout town at the same spots we put out last year. If anybody needs a sign for their yard, Sinclairs have those signs. So please get in touch with Lester Lynn and they will get you a sign for your yard. Any questions on that? And then I'll do next meeting, I'll do a little debrief on how things went.
Yeah, sounds like you're well prepared.
So,
Thank you.
Val will be in the office in the evening, Sylvia will be in the office during the day, so we will have somebody in the office for almost 20 hours, so.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And
Good luck.
even though it seems little in comparison, somebody will be checking on the retreat.
Oh, yes, that, we were gonna address that in the morning. Daniel comes in later in the afternoon, because I'm gonna be having him help, patrol for the, fireworks. But he's already sent out an email, and he's already contacted the folks that were, in charge of starting that event, and basically said, if you start it, you're gonna get $1,000 fine, and the people that pop up their tents to participate in the event will get $500 fines. So they've already been warned, and we will be checking that. We'll have the day shift officers going through there quite often and making sure that's not popping up. If it does, we'll address it.
Yeah, did a nice job. You did.
So I've got communication back to traffic. The street right next to the city hall, so Gallery's been closed. It has been rerouting traffic up Evergreen to come on to Harrison to turn back out onto Hemlock. I've been approached by three other property owners, myself and the 3 other property owners along there that would like to see, even if it's only temporary, a no parking here to end of block. On that, because we have cars that park on the north side of Harrison that take up all my space and making it essentially turning it into a one-way, which it's always said turning into a one-way now, but with construction vehicles coming through there, all like RVs, there's a significant, I don't even know, it's 10 times more traffic. It's a significant increase in traffic in that intersection.
Email me that and I will get that request off to Trevor, so.
Okay, I'm trying to trouble to the fire marshal, get his opinion on.
No, like,
Fire safety, get the fire engine through there.
we just sat on the east end of Gower at Spruce because there was no parking there and people were parking along the curb there. Causing traffic hazard, and that's meant right now, if somebody turns towards the gated area, they can actually make that turn and then back towards Spruce, so. Yeah, but send me an email, I'll come up and take some pictures and look at it with Trevor.
Okay, I can send you some pictures, I'll take a couple of photos, so where the parking and the spaces left that are cars next to it.
That sounds good.
Oh, it is essentially 4 parking spaces, it's, people squeeze 5, but they're really 4 there.
Okay.
Okay, ready for good of the order?
I'll be with the counselors tomorrow at 10.
Or not Monday, but tomorrow. Okay,
Anything else?
for good of the order.
Okay, meeting's adjourned.